So thank you all three for just really exciting projects that are the discussion and the synergy and the collision of art and science. So, and I just to explain, my role is here is just to kind of get us going and have interaction between you. So I'll just start with some things that I started thinking about. Both scientists and artists seek what is unknown, unseen, what is not yet clear, and the process of inquiry and making manifest these ideas is exciting and can be a motivation for a lifetime, which I think we're all doing here. Yes. So I propose, for the purpose of this conversation, you remember you had said, what is the big idea when we came and visited you?
Yeah.
You said, what is the big idea? So
yeah.
I started thinking, like, what is the big idea of all of this? So I think our kind of umbrella of, and especially thinking about the senses that you both are talking about, tangible as in touch, and sound, the kind of cross-fertilization of
yes.
senses. So I just thought that is how we know who we are, through our senses, through the body. So that's the big question. Who are we? How do we know who we are? All right? So I'll just putting that out there. So the five senses of see, smell, hear, touch, and taste. And I think that you, all three of you, are really kind of at the extension of thinking about the body and the senses. And so there you go. That's a way to start.
Do you want to start?
Maybe I want to ask a question because
or go ahead.
because
Yeah, sure.
it's so inspiring. Make a bridge from a painting to the audible sound art, which also reminds me of synesthesia.
Yeah.
And I read the article that some people in South Pacific Ocean can really make a natural translation. If the people see the birds flying, they see the color. If they see the color, it's capable to translate it into the music, for example, sound. Are you trying to recreate some sensation of synesthesia, which we lost in the process of evolution?
No.
No, okay.
No, but it's very interesting because you know what? I'm from the South Pacific.
Oh, really?
I grew up there. But anyway, no, I'm actually very interested. I think that visuals are based on haptic. It is based on this kind of in, out, depth. And when you look at a painting, you look at all this movement at once, right? But your brain actually breaks it. Your brain's looking at a painting, you see the painting. If you slow down the process of seeing, you can go through the touch of it, the frozen process of its making, right? And I think that actually we do that, but we're not aware of it.
I see.
So what I'm trying to do is slow down the process of looking and make people aware of the surface structure.
I see.
Not so much color, because
I
I
see.
think the magic is in the structure. Because that's how we go around the world. We go around like this. We try to find things like this, right? And painting is sort of like this, which is also like yours. Now you're also dealing with this haptics.
That's true.
Yeah.
You map to the sound space. Mapping is so difficult because so many arbitrary mapping you can make computationally. But how to rationalize, how to justify this mapping makes sense and acceptable cultural, historical. I have no answer to this question. But every time I map the meaning, bottle has very clear meaning, like a genie bottle metaphor. We borrow metaphor. But when you make abstract mapping, what's the ground to justify the
I
mapping?
love this part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like, you cannot justify the mapping. Like, there is not one unique mapping to this process. So this is like really a very, very open field and open question.
Scientists have to pretend.
The scientists have to pretend.
But you also pretend, because you gave it a voice.
But yeah, I think, I mean, we can find artistic reasons for what we do, and I think that that's very important. But at the same time, due to my scientific background, I really very much like to work with the digital material, and this is why I defined these trajectories over the surface to get some data out of the surface data that have something to do with the surface on the digital level. So on that level, I was like very, very true to the data by just creating this kind of translating these incidences into sound grains, and so that was on that level like almost an indexical relationship. But then of course I transformed these sounds, but and the way I transformed them like really followed I would say like artistic rules, as Mary said. Like there was the idea to give the painting a voice, for instance. So like how can I introduce a relationship between the color, or it was mostly white, the painting, but there were some shades of color. How can I introduce a relationship between the color and the sound treatment that alludes to the idea of the painting having a voice? So I think there were like many layers. Like there were scientific thinking, dealing with data, but also artistic and aesthetic concerns.
But the sounds he used are human vowel sounds that are so stretched out they don't sound like it anymore. Yeah.
Intentional.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
that
'cause,
was very intentional.
my sensation from hearing the sound at your last video clip was that I was like inside a body, like traveling inside the
That's
body.
great.
I felt embodied by the
Well,
sound.
Actually, when we show the piece, it's a surround sound. We have 5 speakers around, so that you're actually inside the sound. So it was very purposeful, this.
I think one very interesting aesthetic challenge was to create references, but to, at the same time, to avoid, to illustrate not only science through the arts, but also to illustrate one science through the other. Like in the arts, you don't want to, you want to avoid at all costs something that is like this is that. So we had, as Mary said, like we had surround sound speakers, and these speakers were white panels made of foam core, and that matched about the size of the painting itself. So you had some sort of a reference that was representing the painting, and from this reference came the sound. And also Mary came up with this fantastic structure that would hide the painting.
Yeah, it's
So it's all about creating references, showing and hiding at the same time. To play with this relationship between the senses.
I think you suggested about the 5 senses, and many people believe more is better, more colors, more mediums, more information, and I feel opposite. How to enjoy absence of certain modality is much more interesting. You remember music bottles, of course, visual and auditory and tactile, but careful design of the perfume bottles of your friends or parents or somebody, that evokes memory, your old girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever. Also, both of the Coke come from the cultures or the music, for example. And so how to evoke from the shape of the bottle memory is something I care. So without representing, also in the bottle it's empty, but something comes. Then people feel inside as imaginary genie. That's an important Zenish beauty. Without representing, how to convince the presence or how to represent. So this is something, because many people say, why don't you put something in the bottles? No, we can't do that.
Right.
So that's the reason. Also, I like a poem. How many people write a poem?
Well, that would be-
Haiku. How many people tweets? Tweets is such a great exercise. You can poet. I'm doing every day. But the condense 140 characters or 31 characters, then let audience feel between the line, between the character with their imagination. Opposite is 4K, 8K movie, Gone with the Wind. No room left for the imagination. How to leave the silence or empty space, like a Zen or No or Kabuki use. So I saw some of those kind of thinking in a very abstract but beautiful art pieces. How do you take advantage of missing or absence of the modality or information?
Well, you know, for me, the beauty about
That's a great
painting
question.
is that you're missing the sound that's actually, you know, when you have a painting, you want to touch it, but you can't. So it tickles, it creates desire. And I think this is why painting lasts forever over the centuries, because we're so attracted to paintings, because we have this frozen kind of music and we want to touch it. It creates desire. And I think you do the same with the bottle. By not giving us everything, we want more.
Right. But interesting, you said the painting survived for hundreds of years because security guy or sensors to prevent people. That's interesting.
It creates desire.
Yeah,
We
or
want it.
glass case, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sculpture, which I can touch, is so beautiful because unless they can touch it,
Yeah.
that also leads to the question because every materials, including our body or physical stuff, fall apart in 100 years, 500 years. And authenticity, not allowing people recreate, reproduce, is a huge problem of digital archiving, for example. But now 3D model, downloading, printing becomes so easy to do it, for example. Are you interested to leave all the traces in a reproducible physical 3D printable model in the heaven, cloud, then let anybody to recreate? Or do you need to keep authenticity, only one piece, 100 pieces?
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. My pieces, I do all the machining, and I'm not a very good machinist. And so they have this kind of quirkiness, like where that little window is trying to open and it's sort of fluttering. So they have this, I think that if they became reproducible, they would lose this human character, which is, you know, which is my messing up, you know, which is, it sort of makes, it gives them a charm that if you reproduced it, you would lose it.
I agree, but important thing is, I went to Shiro Kuramata, he's a great product designer, went to the museum, and the curator said, this is the last time you can really see this chair. Of course, you can sit, but technically you can sit, but you can't sit anymore 100 years because chair doesn't exist. Also, the wife of the Shiro Kuramata does not allow anybody to reproduce, for example. So do you choose, nobody can really experience your stuff, versus people can recreate maybe 80%, not perfect, but still they can experience. That's an important choice we are facing. But the digital technology, fabrication technology, opening a door, then legal issue, authenticity, ownership, that's a big issue, not only the art, but also science, technology.
Maybe if I can add something to that. I mean, we haven't actually seen today our work. We have only seen a video of our work.
True.
And still, I hope it created some sort of an experience. And I think in the arts, I mean, there is a tradition that you document an artwork through another artwork. And so maybe we can create a better experience with just a video of our work that we can distribute.
And that's the same, excuse me, for your projects too, where we've only seen the video of the...
But beauty is, in 3 minutes, they can really experience. It's still working now. But in 100 years, it's not working. But somebody can reproduce how to leave all the instruction, all the best knowledge to let people to recreate actively. So basically, internet, if you tweet, you know, your message want to be retweeted, not you increase a retweet, but the information already want to be copied. And so that's a new internet eras. So if this culture, you have to be more active, go beyond YouTube, Vimeo video, but how to reconstruct so people can still sit, for example, experiences. So if you really care about media, interactive art, how to preserve this interactive experience for 100 years, very interesting question. But now, doors kind of open. That's the reason I just saw this question, because audience hope enjoy this kind of thinking.
Speaking of which, I think we have time for if audience wants to join us in this conversation. Megan will bring around a mic. That's Megan. Anybody?
Who wants to ask?
Hello. First off, thank you. I'm interested in examining the world. I was trained in informatics, and I see the world through the somewhat eccentric lens of just not even narratives, but an underlying form of how information travels. Like a rock is a rock, not because it's like a crystalline structure, it's got rockness about it. I'm steeped in phenomenology, so there's a connection that's very deep for me in identity function through time. I got trained in the early days of interface design, so I think what I'm seeing is different approaches to how to connect people to the informatics of the situation that they're in through artistic endeavors, trying to take a painting and not even translate it, but actually connect the paintingness to the moment of the painting, so I'd like to kind of point of what I think is really going on here is intentions outgoing of the artist or the scientist or some thing, like trying to get a message out and then trying to look at how the message is received. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on whether intentions is a really good, tight way of talking about that in terms of an individual as an intention through time, or an artistic work as an intention through time, in the same way that a rock, in my peculiar metaphysics, is an intention through time. And the attempt of the work being discussed, I think, is to remove time from that equation and just have the thingness present for us all to be able to gather around that. Does that make any sense? I know it's a bit weird.
Very profound. Would you go first?
Would I go first? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm so nice. Yeah.
I'm trying to follow everything you're saying because I think it's really remarkable, and I want to make sure I understand correctly. So you see the work as sort of a stop in time.
I see the work, and I think the reason I'm speaking is I find it very difficult to put what I'm thinking into language. And
I agree.
I see and feel a similar connection to, you guys are putting
Yes.
your experience and thoughts into different things, but also this scientific tradition of comparing notes of what that attempt looks like and how to derive work from that attempt. And we're all kind of sitting here comparing that. So that's just my best shot on starting a conversation.
You're talking about how it's so hard to put things into words. And I think that that is very, very, very difficult. And I think it's also very, very difficult to put an experience of looking at a painting into words. And I think I try to figure out how it makes me so, every waking hour I'm trying to figure it out. How is it so magical? And I thought, I'll figure out what it sounds like. And that was useless because, it wasn't useless. I liked the piece very much, but I'm still no, there's something more, and this is what I was saying. It's like love, it's like being alive. You want to know things, and the more you know, the more you don't know, and the more you want to know, and it just drives the quest, which is, I think, marvelous.
Can I ask a corollary question? I don't want to stop.
But go ahead.
I want to ask a corollary question because I'd like to know if it's intention for meaning that's driving you, or if it's the delay of time, which you started with. Because what I'm struck with in the work and in the way you talk about the work is that you want to return process to what looks like a product.
That's a good way of putting it.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of the pleasure of looking is being invited to accompany, again, the activity. And this is a challenge that I have just as a teacher of humanities, about talking about art with people who aren't interested in art and the humanities, which is most people today, right?
Right.
And one of the challenges is that they value art as a thing, and not as a process, right? That the product overtakes the process. And if you say, well, it's the other way around, the question of meaning, of value, gets fuzzy for them. And what I appreciated through all of the presentations is this being captivated again by what you said just now, living, the process, love, knowing that you're not going to get there, but the pleasure of accompanying.
Yeah. Now it's your turn.
But that's
Oh, it's back to me?
I think I think a process is so important. Many people only see the result, marks.
Right.
I'm a calligrapher, but even before first drop of the black ink hit on the paper, already calligraphy has started. When I make ink, breathing, so it's a dance, martial arts. Same as the piano. When Xiao Xiao breathe, move, already music has started. All the subtle movement has so important beauty. So enjoying all the process, anticipation is so critical. But current media, like Times or Helvetica, 9 Point, is great to capture the poem. But when I went to the museum of the Kenji Miyaza's museum, he's a poet, but I saw the manuscript of the last farewells. He written again and again because refining. So final poems I read a lot by printed media, but I never seen all the struggles of his mind to how to conquer the sorrowness of he lost his beloved young sister, but bringing this sorrow to the religious level. So I really appreciate it. But even watching handwritten blue ink manuscripts, I start hearing the sound of pen tip scratch the paper. Then I start seeing his body. He worked so hard for the agriculture. So that's a whole great experiences which completely lost by mass production. So how to capture, how to convey, how to exhibit really matter. That's the reason I care about the representation and the process, why he struggled, not only the final result captured by the museum.
Maybe, Hiroshi, we cannot mass produce this. And
Pardon?
maybe we cannot mass produce it, and it's not worth mass producing.
But still there's a way to capture those. Most important thing is desire, because as a reader of the poems, I didn't think about, I want to see the older manuscript, older version. But the version management is not easy. If you write a chord, for example, so many technique. So changing the culture, also artists should proudly, all my struggle, process came to this idea is another important piece. Then we can really enrich the way of the,
Yeah.
That's my dream. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more. Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. So I have a science background.
Me too.
Yeah, you too.
Oh, good.
I've worked in cognitive neuroscience, and I'm also totally blind. And first of all, I think we have a lot to talk about. Tons of things come to my mind, but one of the things that pops into I realized as I was, enjoying all the sounds was that I really was enjoying all of the sounds that were produced by these paintings. A lot of them I still have no idea what the visuals were, but they were actually really good. They were really what I would call ear catching, and I'm assuming the tactile will be very hand catching. And I say that because in my experience, I've often found that when that if I find, sometimes I've seen a lot of paintings with, tactile representations of paintings where someone will say, hey, we have this painting, we got the Mona Lisa, and we want to make it tactile, so a lot of times so that either blind people can enjoy it.
I see.
Usually that's the sort of the context. And a lot of times when I look at these paintings, my reaction is okay, so maybe it's kind of cool, because yes, you can touch it, but it's not always meaningful. It's just, trying to represent vision in a tactile form. But I feel like one of the important things is how do we, the idea of making a painting or a piece of art, multi-sensory, and making sure that all of those other senses are still meaningful. It's not just enough to make it so that you can hear and touch it, but so that it's actually really, really good. And I've so far been impressed by what you guys have been doing in this presentation, and just wondering if you guys had any thoughts about that as you were, producing your artwork.
Well, I think it's
maybe
you.
Florian,
I think it's your,
Yeah.
for you.
Thank you very much for this fantastic question. And that also kind of brings me back to the earlier question about intention, and I think I maybe can try to answer them both together. I think as an artist, what we want to what we are fascinated with is something like an encounter. Like for Mary, for you, it's an encounter with painting, and for me, that was also a really interesting aspect in our collaboration, because I had to learn to be fascinated with it just as you are, because I'm not a painter. I work with sound, and I like to program and signal processing, and but basically maybe that's all there is to it, that you want to basically create an opportunity for an encounter with the same intensity that you feel it as an artist, and so there is no specific. There cannot be a specific intention of trying to communicate something, something very specific that you could name, because otherwise you could just name it. You wouldn't make an artwork. Although if you name it in a poem, or if you kind of describe it in a poem, that's as well an artwork. And so that brings me back to the earlier question about. Making these tactile images. I think that's really interesting, because that shows exactly that an artistic experience is not a translation. A translation can only translate information, and that can be very, very important if the information is otherwise not accessible. But the artistic creation and an aesthetic experience is beyond that. And if we want to make the aesthetic experience accessible, then we need to work on this translation from an artistic perspective.
And even if it's a translation, it still has to be good.
Yeah. I agree.
Exactly. I think we're going to end our formal program here. I'm going to thank very much Florian, Mary, and Hiroshi for a really
you.
fantastic
Thank you very much.
Thank you.